Hello, everyone. What a great week we have now to celebrate our freedom and also to discuss the freedoms that we're losing. So, we're going to talk a little bit about freedom under fire today and losing freedoms. But first, let's talk about the great week we have of the 4th of July and the freedoms that we have and the celebration of our victories over the years that people have fought and died that we can have this freedom today. And of course, here in Kansas City, we're looking at the weather. At Revive Church, we have the big fireworks display tonight, and not only us, but other people in Kansas City. We're all studying the weather. So far, if you're listening, we're still on, and we're evaluating. In the next half hour, we will evaluate. And I think we're going to go ahead and take our chances because the other day we have is Sunday, and it could rain then too. So anyway, you can stay tuned on that. But so glad we could be together. And hi, Darren. Darren's watching, and people are coming in. I don't know. I think people are working today. I don't know if people are going to work on Friday or not. And if you're listening and following along, I may say this again, but we have our guest Frank Seamster here this weekend, and he will be preaching Friday night. Usually we just have intercessory prayer and active prayer. We'll still have some prayer, but we're going to have him speak Friday night. And of course, he'll be speaking Sunday and be with us. And if you've never met Frank, if we go ahead, which I think we will probably go ahead with the fireworks tonight, and we got food trucks and jumpy bouncy things and lots of fun stuff going on tonight. And if it rains, we can go inside for a little while. I don't think the forecast is constant rain, just some rain, and so we'll do that, and we'll work it out. But watch for announcement. I'll probably do a Facebook and some announcements and maybe a video to help you understand how to apply tonight. But anyway, we're talking about our freedoms, and what a great week to talk about freedoms. And yet, what a strange week we had last week with the presidential debates. And now the news is what's going to happen with our president, who's going to be president, who's going to run for president, all these things. Wow. And if you're confused, everybody's confused in not knowing what the Democratic Party is going to do. They don't know what they're going to do. Are we going to get somebody better, somebody not better? I don't know. We all know that former President Trump will be running. I don't think that's going to change. But we did have Supreme Court rules changed on his immunity, and let's continue to pray. Not even if you're not a Republican, you don't like former President Trump, you don't like President Trump. Okay, hi Beth, good to have you here. Even if you don't like him, we don't want to have the freedoms of the legal system so corrupt that people are able to go way against the obvious, right? The obvious, and the obvious things that are not criminal, the obvious things that are political. We don't want that, and that's freedoms taken away too. Even though the justice system might be working and employed, it's still our freedoms taken away, because who wants that? We want to have fair and just and legal system, and we don't want anybody to be above the law, but we don't want people to pursue to ruin a person when ordinarily they would leave them alone, but because they're running for president, they're being pursued. On the other hand, you may feel that President Biden was treated unfairly. I don't know what you feel about the debates, and that I get confused about it. I saw some clips of him before the debate. Then I saw the debate. Then I saw some clips of him. Hi, Nathan. I saw some clips after the debate, and I'm not even sure it looked like the same person during the debate. During the debate, as you know, they all talk about the stare and the paleness and all that, and I see that. And then after a day or two after he did a speech on the Supreme Court ruling on immutability for the president, and like, this doesn't even sound like him. His voice was still a little raspy, but not the same. And his look, like he didn't have that stare. Okay, I don't know. I'm glad I don't have to decide, but it'll affect all of us as we talk about our freedoms today. So a great week to talk about freedom. And now we realize that the Bible says what? I'm sorry. Oh, hi, Linda. I had my bifocals caught me. I couldn't see your name. Hi, Linda. Good to have you. And so as we talk about freedom and the 4th of July and all that kind of stuff, we realize that our freedoms are under fire, though, right now. And the Bible says for freedom, we have been set free. And there's a lot of people in pastors, church folks, everything think freedom means no rules, no laws, and become lawless. And I like the unity of the Spirit, as everybody that knows me knows. I don't care much for a church that everybody's, the service starts, and I've been to a lot of churches, maybe you have too, where this worship starts or whatever, or preaching starts, and this one group over here is playing on their phones, the other's dancing in the aisles, and then you got the real super spiritual people. They're thumbing through their Bibles looking for a word from God while the worship is going on. They're sitting down, looking for a word from God or during the sermon, and rather than the unity of the Spirit, where we're all focused on the Word, we're all focused. It's time to worship. It's time to give. It's time to listen to the Word of God, and that is freedom, even though it's organized freedom, because organized freedom is better than chaos freedom. And so if your freedom takes away from my freedom, then it's not freedom. Correct? So that's the problem we have in America today. Is in the name of freedom, people are taking away other freedoms. For instance, freedom of speech has been under fire for a couple of years now, particularly. We have the phrase cancel culture, which we never had before. And so freedoms are being taken away in the name of freedom. So some people have the freedom to speak, but if they don't like what you're saying, they take your freedom away. Okay. There's people say things I wish they wouldn't say. There's people say things I don't agree with, but I don't want freedom of speech to be taken away, because then it takes my freedom of speech. So we have Christians under fire. We have certain politicians under fire, and if they say anything, if pastors, they're under fire. Some of them rightfully so, but it's okay. We gotta say we've got to give them freedom of speech and be able to live with it, be able to realize I don't agree with what you just said, but it's okay because I have the freedom to say what I want to say. Right now, our freedom of speech is being taken away. The cancel culture, as I said, and then if you don't if certain people don't like what you say, then they bully you publicly, or either publicly or on social media, to where we lose our freedom rather than gain our freedom. And so today, our freedoms are under fire, and we have the freedoms taken away in the name of freedom, which really doesn't work. And so I was looking at at some of the things in my notes here from the book. Let me grab it. Sorry. Okay. If you only knew, maybe you have this already, but if you don't, you can still get it free download, or you can buy it for, I think, $7 and get it. But in this, we have a chapter called Emancipated, and talk about freedom. And, some generations, some people have no history of anything. They don't understand history. They don't understand how things like we're seeing today can be so multiplied into a disaster, a world war, or a government collapse, or taken over by another government. So I often refer back to the 1930s, 20s, sort of. 20s are a fun time. Sorry, I'm coughing. Let me take a drink. The 20s are fun because my grandparents, here I can do an ad, Pure Leaf. Sponsored by Pure Leaf. Unfortunately, no money is involved, but but in 1920s, first of all, I studied the 1920s, wild time, and then I think of my grandparents when that. And actually, I can't say my grandparents really, because I never met my grandfathers either side. So I never had a grandfather. I had a step grandfather, but my grandmother remarried, because my grandfather died, my natural one, remarried in her 40s or something like that, and he was in his 40s, and he'd never been married, and they moved into his mother's house. So not being married and being already in his 40s, he'd never been around kids. So he really didn't, he was okay, but not really involved like a real grandfather might be. So I had so I had a grandmother and a grandmother, but I looked at pictures and I talked to them and I thought, trying to place them in the 1920s is hilarious, because I know what was going on in the 1920s, and it was wild, and it was free, and lots of lots of parties, lots of drinking, lots of wild stuff. It was the Roaring Twenties, as you remember that phrase, and trying to take your grandparents and place them in that is hard. But then, after the more I studied it, I realized, they probably had their times too. Oh, well, then we get up to 1929 into 1930, and the stock market crash and the Great Depression that went on through the 30s. And because of that, the 20s and 30s, Europe, we study our country, but in Europe, it was a whole different story because World War One, which ended in 1918, and from about 14 to 18, 19, was fought in Europe, and a lot of it was fought in France, and terrible war. Nobody expected it. It was still the old war. I don't know how much you want to hear about this kind of stuff, but it was still the old war because it was fought in the battlefields. Okay. The cities were basically left alone mostly. And so people went to war and they went out to the field, the Flanders field, etc. And there they had, it was horrible. The trenches, the barbed wire, nobody expected germ warfare and all this, all that. It was a horrible, horrible war that I think has been forgotten and overlooked how bad it was because it's been overshadowed by the drama of World War II. The difference is World War I, we went because we felt like we needed to help. World War II, we were dragged into it. We still helped before that with supplies and stuff, but then when the attack came on Pearl Harbor, it was the drama of they've attacked us, now let's fight back, and so it was a whole different mentality. But World War II changed. There was never a war like World War II. Yes, they went to the islands, they went to the country, but it's the first war that civilians were pulled into where they bombed cities. I've reflected back in the Civil War. It's hard to imagine this in a way. The great battles of the Civil War that you can remember, Chickamauga, if you know that name, or of course everybody. Some of them, you know some of the great battles that were fought, and but people would, especially in the South. Well, I don't know if it was just a lot of the battles were Southern-ish. Would they'd go out in their carriage or on their horse. They take even kids. They would take a picnic and go out towards the battlefield and make a picnic on the ground or whatever, and watch the battle. And to me, it would be like, don't go out there. It might be dangerous, but hi, Vanessa. But but they did because it wasn't a civilian type warfare until there is an exception, isn't there? Until they burned Atlanta. They burned down Atlanta, and the march to the Sherman's March to the Sea. So, okay, a little bit. John, hi, John. A little bit exception there, but generally the battles were out in the battle fields, and I've visited a lot of those battlefields over the years. But World War II was different. World War One, out in the battlefield. World War II, all of a sudden, Hitler began to bomb cities, and then we would bomb them back. And it was not just in there. So England, particularly the two main ones, Britain and Great Britain, I should say, and because it is great, I like Britain, Great Britain, and of course Germany then got bombed back, and so civilians began to die just in their shelters and fighting in the streets of Warsaw, Poland. When Hitler attacked Poland, he attacked the city of Warsaw. Not, it wasn't like we went out and fought in the field like they have in the United States, like the Civil War or something like that. So it changed, and with that, then the world changed, the mentality changed, and we began to understand evil a little bit better. So how did they get to that point, though? See, the freedoms of people were taken away in a very sly way, similar to what we see today. In that, in the name of freedom, freedoms were taken away. So, how Hitler and his propaganda team, he had a great propaganda team, began to talk to the German people that they've been abused, misused, abused basically by the Treaty of Versailles of World War One, and they've been, they need to they should have been treated better, and we are the German people, and began to imply and put in them that we're better, we're a better race than this. We've been treated wrong, and it's these people's fault. Which of course they blame the Jews and other people. And in the name of freedom, said we need to get our freedom back. But in order to get our freedom, we have to get rid of books, certain books. We have to get rid of certain people. And so that's how they said these people are taking our freedoms away. And it's similar today in that certain people are so afraid to have equal rights for everybody because they're afraid that certain people are going to take their freedoms away. And so now we have this tremendous emotional, violent, uh, whether it be in the streets or whether it be online, and verbal violence of saying these people are lying, these people are going to take our democracy away, we're going to ruin our country, and so we have to rise up in our freedom. But what they're doing is the same thing that happened prior to World War II, is when by the time the war started, generally the German people had decided. Hi, Daniel. Generally, the German people had decided that Jewish people were and have been taking their freedoms away. Were and have been. They control money. They control this, that, and the other. And so, the only solution is if we get rid of the Jews, we will then get our freedom. And that doesn't work. So you can't take freedom away from one to get freedom for yourself. Everybody has equal freedom, and everybody has the right to do business. We have the right to have freedom of speech. We have the right to be capitalists, start a business if we want to. If our business goes well, we do well. If it doesn't, then they close down. It's sort of the natural selection. If people don't know what they're doing, uh, then then they'll close anyway. Okay, so right now we have one group, and I don't want to say the name, but one group in the world, really, that's the most powerful, richest group in the world that are basically controlling uh, everything, and to their own gain, they are willing to take your freedom away and your prosperity away, taking the middle class away, uh, so that we are dependent on them. I preached a few weeks ago, on Father's Day, that the idea is, this is the propaganda of it. If you own less and you don't have to worry about owning a home, owning a car, and all the things, then you'll be happier because owning a house, or paying taxes on the house, keep the upkeep of a house, think of all that. You'd be happier, wouldn't you, if you didn't have to do that? So they're buying up the homes, and in Lee Summit, where I live, which is Greater Kansas City, uh, the apartments, it could be everywhere, but it is amazing. The hundreds of apartments that are going up so rapidly. And I think, how are they going to fill those apartments? Well, the reason they can fill them is they're new, they're fancy, they got a pool or whatever. But it's like, okay, I can't afford to buy a house. All right. Since I can't afford it, the down payment, 20%, maybe. John, you're here. You said 25%. So I can't afford it, but I can just make monthly payments like I make on my car. And so I can move into an apartment. It's nice, it's good enough, and it's, fancy and new and all that. So they're moving to apartments because they can't afford housing. And then the mentality is, well, this is a lot easier. Just pay some money and I don't have to worry about upkeep. I don't have to worry about the plumbing if it breaks and all that kind of stuff. So but the sly thing is they're taking your freedoms away when they make it too difficult to own anything. Car prices. I was talking to Kathy the other day. Like, I'm not even my car. I really like the SUV I drive. I have a great story. It was a miracle story, as I've said in several times, of when I bought that the down in Texas. Linda, you remember, and the people wanted to get what I wanted to buy off the lot. Little did I know it was actually a Cadillac dealership, and they wanted to get the Lexus off the lot. Well, this particular Lexus was way out of my price range. They had a lower one that could have worked, and it was still a nice car and it's good, but it was not compared to this one. And I didn't know that. I thought, and so he finally called me back after I didn't call them back and said, "Hey, I got to tell you, we're not a Lexus dealer. we're a Cadillac dealer, and we have one this on the lot. And what was happening is people were coming on the lot, and it was new then, not now, but it was new then. People were coming on the lot and driving the Cadillac. Then they drive the Lexus. Then they go across the street to the Lexus dealer, which was nearby, and buy a Lexus. So these people at this dealership are going, "What are we going to do? We got to get rid of this thing." And I just happened to call and said, I would like it. I can't afford it. I can afford this level. It was 460 or whatever model. And they called me back and said, listen, we want to get this off the lot. We will sell it to you for the same price as a brand new 460. You know how much that was? 30,000 off. Well, that tells you how expensive it was. They took $30,000 off this brand new car, SUV. I'm still driving it. It's getting up there now. I said, Kathy, do you think I ought to consider? She said, maybe you should call those people down in Texas. So anyway, quite a story. But I own it. Okay, I own it. Kathy owns her car. We own our house. And we made that thing because if you own it, then you have freedoms that you don't have if you don't own it. And so that's what people, even buying a house, they make it so high in interest. Well, cars too right now, interest rates, that it's hard to own it until, they put you on a 6-year loan on a car and you don't own it. Then you go to trade it and you owe on it more than it's worth. Now you're in bondage to them. And of course, the car dealers and big business. And so that's why I encourage people, do the best you can to own something, even if it's not the car of your dreams. Mine might have been, I waited a long time. This is the one I wanted for years. And I don't know what I'll do next. I mean, it's still fantastic. What a buy this vehicle is. But, I don't know what I'll do. Maybe I'll move up. But anyway, but I own it, and try to own something. That's what I'm trying to say. You want to try to own something. Try to work it, pay off, and if you pay off something, do your best to hang on to it until you really get in a financial position to where you are. Let's say this cars, you are the boss when you hit the car lot. Okay, you're the boss. You're in a good position, and so you don't want to owe more than it's worth when you go and try to buy a car. So anyway, that's another subject. But our freedoms are being taken away, freedom of speech in the name of freedom. And I was amazed this week when the attacks upon the Supreme Court because of the decisions that they made. John just came on. He's ready to own a home. I'm ready for you too. I hope, we've been talking a lot about that. I want that to work out for you. But our freedoms are being taken away because all of a sudden the Supreme Court is under attack. I don't know, like they want to, and people want to change it. And I'm sorry. Thanks, Linda. Yeah, if I get one in Texas, she's from Texas, and so she would be able to big help there. And so the what we've got to have, we got to have all three governments. We got to have the presidency, we got to have the Congress, we got to have the Supreme Court. We have to have for checks and balances. And all of a sudden, the Supreme Court is supposed to be supreme. That's why it's a Supreme Court. It's not a regular court, and they weigh and change the direction of our country if they need to, keeping us in check. And now people want to go after them and want them to resign and want to put more on and blah, blah, blah. And it's no respect. And so anyway, they made a decision, and that's their decision. But it keeps us in checks and balance, because they're not the only people making decisions. The president can make decisions. The government can make decisions. And so that's the way it works. It's worked so well. And oftentimes we haven't got our way. We haven't elected I didn't get elected who I wanted to, or you, but still we've had that freedom. Right now, our freedoms are being taken away, and it's so sly. And in the name of freedom, our children are being educated by the government in our public schools in the name of we know better. But now parents are losing their freedom to have a say or to educate their own children. And it is not a pretty picture. If you understand spiritual things, you'll understand the danger of what is being taught. And so we need to, and Zion's here with me. He's getting up and coming over. But, I have this paper in front of me, and I didn't talk much about it at all. So I didn't talk. Let me add this, and then we'll move on to I think in the debates, former President Trump mentioned World War III. I don't think I think people are so busy, and I understand uh, trying to pay for groceries. I was in the store the other night. I often laugh because I never used to go grocery shopping ever. Neither did Kathy when we traveled all the time, but now less. After the pandemic, and we're here, so we've decided sometimes we go late night when hardly anybody's there, and just walk slowly around. Like old people, I guess. and But anyway, we were at the checkout, and I could see there was a grandma and a daughter. She had three kids with her. She had more than that after I visited with her, and they're in front of us, and they're trying to pay for their groceries, and but they got it. It took a long time because she's like looking for change, looking for food stamps. Okay, and I was back a little ways, but she did it. But then then the kids, they wanted to buy, I don't know, candy or something, and just treats that they didn't need. And so they went and grabbed them after the checkout, and they're crying and wanting stuff, and they're over there to the side. They're already done, and I can see the grandma and see the mom. The grandma saying, "You don't need those things. We don't have the money. We don't need to buy those things." The mom was closer to me, so I went up to her and I said, "Is it okay? Is it okay if I buy these for the kids?" Because I said, "I don't care." They each had a bunch of stuff, I don't care. So she looked a little embarrassed at first, and then I looked at the grandma, and grandma saying like, "These kids don't need it," but then she gave in. So I said, "Okay." Just so I told the person, I said, "Here, run these." So they ran them over, and they ran the scanner on them. Kids are happy, and the mom's thanking me, grandma's thanking me. And I said, "You know what? I'm a grandpa too. I understand it." And I said, "Just it's not very. That was not a very big blessing. If they had been a little closer to me in lines, then I would have paid for their groceries. But I didn't know they were a little bit in front of me. But anyway, people are so involved trying to just the regular folks trying to buy groceries, uh, and trying to gas is so because we're using, we're we're in the gasoline department. We're using our savings to buy it cheaper. So that means if we run out of savings gasoline, our reserve, it's going to be more expensive because we won't have reserve. But okay, anyway, it is cheaper right now. It's not as bad as it could have been as it was at one time. But that utilities, whoa! I get things online. People talking about trying to pay the utilities. Okay, I saw a thing from Evergy come across, and the employees are saying, "Hey, we're sorry it's so expensive. Remember, we have to pay too." That's what I thought. The employees are paying it too. Okay, I guess that we're not concentrating how close we are to the possibility of a world war. We have North Korea, China. I was in discussion with somebody the other day saying we were surprised. I said it could be this spring. This is a person that's lived in China and says, "I'm surprised China has not already attacked Taiwan." I said, "Me too." I don't know what they're waiting for because they plan on it. But anyway, North Korea and China, a pact. Russia, China have entered into agreements. The Ukraine war. What's happening in Ukraine? You never hear about it anymore. It's like not in the news. However, uh, the Putin and Russia, not the Russian people. Oh, there's so many great believers in Russia. My Lord, what are we going to do about that if there's a war? There's such great believers in China. What do we do if we go into a world war and our spiritual brothers and sisters are on the other end? That's never happened before like that. Exactly. A little bit when we were with war with Germany, we had, there were German believers, but not like today. But anyway, Putin is not planning on just a war with Ukraine. Putin wants to reestablish the Soviet Union, which was huge. And I remember it. Some of you do too. The Soviet Union was huge, like the United States was a union of states and countries. All that's going on, and we're so distracted by politics, by the debate, by who's going to be president, by inflation, by groceries, etc., energy prices, that we're not realizing we need to pray and prepare ourselves mentally, emotionally, and militarily, spiritually and militarily, for countries that are advancing. And one big concern of mine this week, this is my 1 week concern, is a cyber war where they have now the capability of a nuclear explosion in the air that would take out all the chips we have in our cars, and you wouldn't be able to start your car. Yeah, it wouldn't be able to use your phone. It could happen in a matter of hours. Uh, unless they can shoot it out of the sky. They have that. They'd love to use it. They have it, obviously. Are we prepared for that? And so I want to be more prepared. I want to be spiritually prepared to not fear. Do not fear. Do not fear, but be proactive and with faith. Pray with faith and understand what's going on. Very much reflective of what happened in Europe before World War II. The minds of millions of people were damaged by propaganda. And we have propaganda today that's damaging the minds of the American people and taking away freedoms in the name of freedom. And only people like us. So what's the bottom line? Well, politics, yeah, different president. We don't know. I don't know what's going to happen there. We need, we must have a revival of the spirit. And that will wake up our minds and we'll become proactive for God first, proactive for family, proactive for church, proactive for faith. And that's what we need in the United States today. So, in the name of freedom, our freedoms are under fire, and we can only do it by faith. If you'd like to get the transcript of this or a study guide of this, I think it's right here in my hand. I think they're going to download it. It may not be on morefaithmorelife.com right now, but it will be, and you can get this study guide and of course the book. If You Only Knew is free, or you can buy it if you want to have a hard copy, or you can have a free download. Very, very. Interesting times, interesting times. And I want you to be prepared because the Spirit will prepare you for everything and anything. And so thank you for joining me today on this 4th of July weekend. I hope you have a great time. I'm going to leave this right now and go discuss tonight. But I think the leaning is plan on being on our property tonight. If you live close enough to come. We do have some canopies you can get under. We can go inside for a while. I'll try to have some stuff going on if it rains. I don't think it's going to rain constantly. And we can hold out maybe till 9, 10 and have our